The holographic communicator filled Taimin's small apartment with blue light. Jinho and the other guards stood at attention nearby, their fists over their hearts. Taimin stood in the center of the room, trying not to shake. The image that appeared was of a being who radiated power and authority. Sovereign Kang was tall and broad-shouldered, with silver-blue skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. He wore robes that looked both simple and elegant, marked with symbols that Taimin did not understand. His face was stern, the face of someone who commanded star systems and made decisions that affected billions of lives. But his eyes were kind. They were sad too, filled with a grief that Taimin recognized because he carried the same grief for his own parents. "Taimin," the sovereign said, and his voice was deep and resonant, "I have waited one full cycle of your Earth year to speak with you. I wanted to see if your compassion was a single moment of kindness or a true reflection of who you are." Taimin did not know what to say, so he stayed quiet. The sovereign continued, "I have watched what you have built with my son's legacy. I have seen the shelters you have opened, the children you have helped, the example you have set for your world. You have honored Daesung better than any monument or memorial we could have created. I just tried to do what was right," Taimin said quietly. "Your son, he was kind even when he was dying. I could see it in his eyes. He deserved kindness in return." The sovereign's expression softened. "My son believed that every species had the potential for greatness. He spent his life studying other civilizations, trying to understand what made them unique. He came to Earth because he believed humans had something special, a capacity for compassion even in the face of suffering." The sovereign paused, and Taimin saw him take a slow breath. "His death broke my heart, but what you did in his final moments, you proved he was right about humanity, and what you have done since has shown that his death was not meaningless." Taimin felt tears in his eyes but tried to hold them back. He failed. "I speak to you now not just as a father who lost his son, but as the sovereign of the Celestial Imperium," Kang continued. "Our Imperium is an alliance of more than 1,000 species across many star systems. We work together for mutual prosperity and peace. For decades we have been watching Earth, trying to decide if humanity is ready to join the galactic community." This surprised Taimin. "You have been watching us?" "Yes, we have seen your wars, your divisions, your cruelties. We have seen how you harm your own planet and each other. But we have also seen your art, your music, your literature. We have seen your capacity to grow and change. We have seen acts of incredible courage and kindness." The sovereign looked directly at Taimin. "My son's death and your response to it has convinced our council that humanity is ready, not for full membership yet, but for partnership." Jinho stepped forward and explained. "The sovereign is offering Earth a mentorship program. For 10 years, the Celestial Imperium will share knowledge and help solve problems. In return, Earth must commit to working toward global cooperation and protecting vulnerable populations." The sovereign nodded. "We will share technology for clean energy, for healing, for protecting your environment. We will share knowledge about the galaxy and the civilizations within it. We will guide you, but we will not rule you. The choice of what kind of world you build must be your own." "Why are you telling me this?" Taimin asked. "I am just a kid. I am not a president or a king. I have no power." "You have more power than you know," the sovereign replied. "You have the power of example. When you helped my son, the whole world watched. When you built the foundation, millions of people donated and volunteered. When you speak, people listen. We need someone from Earth to represent humanity in accepting this partnership. We need someone who understands what it means to suffer, but who chooses compassion anyway. We need you." The weight of those words felt crushing. Taimin was only 15 years old now. He still struggled with math homework. He still had nightmares about his parents' death and his time on the streets. How could he possibly represent all of humanity? But then he thought about Misun and all the other kids in the shelters. He thought about the people around the world who had donated to the foundation, who had volunteered their time, who had opened their hearts. He thought about Yuna, who had apologized for failing him. He thought about Sora, who had become his friend when he needed one most. He thought about Jinho and the guards who had stayed on Earth to help him. Maybe he could not represent all of humanity, but he could represent the part of humanity that tried, even when things were hard, the part that chose to help even when it cost something, the part that believed tomorrow could be better than today. "I will do it," Taimin said. "I will speak for Earth, but I need help. I cannot do this alone. You will not be alone, the sovereign promised. We will guide you. Your friends will support you, and humanity will stand with you if you give them the chance. The sovereign explained that there would be a global summit in 3 months. Leaders from every nation would attend. Representatives from the Celestial Imperium would be there. And Taemin would give a speech explaining why Earth should accept the partnership. After the communication ended, Taemin sat down on his bed feeling overwhelmed. Jinho sat beside him. You do not have to do this if you do not want to. The sovereign would understand. No, Taemin said. I want to. I am just scared. Being scared is okay, Jinho said, echoing words Taemin himself had said to Misun. What matters is what you do when you are scared. Over the next 3 months, Taemin prepared. He worked with speechwriters, but he insisted on using his own words. He studied the Celestial Imperium and learned about the other species in the Alliance. He visited more shelters and talked to more children, reminding himself why this mattered. Sora helped him practice his speech. Yuna made sure he ate properly and got enough sleep. The guards taught him how to stand with confidence and project his voice. His teachers at school gave him extra help so he would not fall behind in his studies. Finally, the day of the summit arrived. Taemin stood backstage at the United Nations building in New York, wearing a simple suit that Sora had helped him pick out. World leaders sat in the audience. Cameras broadcast to every corner of the globe. Billions of people were watching. Jinho stood beside him, hand on his shoulder. Remember, you are not speaking to the leaders in that room. You are speaking to the children who feel alone and forgotten. You are speaking to everyone who has ever needed help and wondered if anyone would come. You are speaking to the part of humanity that wants to be better. Taemin nodded. He took a deep breath. He thought of Prince Daesung, dying in a cold alley, and the choice that had changed everything. Then he walked onto the stage to tell the world that tomorrow could be different if they chose to make it so. The applause was deafening, but Taemin barely heard it. He was thinking about one thing. The blanket his mother had made, which he had given to a dying stranger, which had somehow led to this moment. Sometimes, he realized, the smallest acts of kindness could change the entire world. You just had to be brave enough to care. The world changed overnight, and Taemin changed with it. The Korean government, embarrassed by international attention on their failed social services, moved quickly. A social worker named Yuna had been searching for Taemin for months after he disappeared from the system. When she finally met him, surrounded by alien soldiers and news cameras, she cried. She had tried so hard to find him and she had failed. Now everyone knew about that failure, but Yuna did not make excuses. She apologized to Taemin directly in front of everyone. I should have found you sooner. I should have done more. I am sorry. It was the first time an adult had apologized to Taemin in 2 years. The Prince Daesung Memorial Foundation moved quickly. A large corporation, desperate for good publicity, donated a building in Seoul. It was old but sturdy, with enough space for offices, living quarters, and a shelter for homeless youth. The Celestial Guard provided technology that seemed like magic, devices that could diagnose illness instantly, generators that created unlimited clean energy, and systems that could purify any water. Jinho and the other 5 guards, whose names Taemin learned were Bora, Taeyang, Hyejin, Minho, and Ara, worked tirelessly to set everything up. They were patient with Taemin, teaching him about their technology while also learning about human customs and culture. Taemin moved into a small apartment in the Foundation building. It had a bed, a bathroom, heat, and a small kitchen. It was the first time he had lived indoors in 2 years. The first night, he could not sleep. The bed was too soft. The room was too quiet. He was too used to the sounds of the street. Jinho found him sitting in the hallway at 3 in the morning. Cannot sleep? Taemin shook his head. It feels wrong, being comfortable when others are still out there cold and hungry. That is why we are building the shelter, Jinho reminded him gently, so others can be comfortable too. But you cannot help anyone if you do not take care of yourself first. It was hard advice to follow. Taemin had spent so long just surviving that he did not know how to do anything else. But slowly, with help, he learned. The Foundation hired people to run the day-to-day operations. Yuna quit her government job and came to work as the shelter coordinator. She understood the system. And more importantly, she understood the kids who fell through its cracks. Other social workers joined them, along with doctors, teachers, and counselors. 3 months after the incident, Taimin enrolled in school. It was terrifying. He was far behind in his studies. He had missed 2 years of education while living on the streets. The other students stared at him. Everyone knew who he was. Some treated him like a celebrity. Others resented the attention he got. A few bullied him, calling him names and saying he was making up the story for attention. One girl was different. Her name was Sora, and she treated him like he was just another student. When he struggled with math, she offered to help him study. When other kids whispered about him, she told them to mind their own business. When he got overwhelmed and hid in the bathroom, she waited outside and asked if he was okay. "Why are you being nice to me?" Taimin asked her one day. Sora shrugged. "Because you seem like you need a friend, and I think you are more than just the boy from the news. Everyone else sees the story. I want to know the person." Slowly, Taimin began to adjust. School was hard, but he worked at it. Jinho helped him with science and mathematics. Sora helped him with Korean language and history. Yuna made sure he ate regular meals and got enough sleep. The other guards taught him things he never expected: how to defend himself, how to stand with confidence, how to recognize when someone needed help. The foundation grew rapidly. Donations poured in from around the world. The alien technology was licensed to companies, generating steady income. Within 6 months, they opened shelters in 5 major Korean cities. Each one provided beds, food, counseling, medical care, and job training for homeless youth. Taimin visited each shelter personally. He met the kids living there, listened to their stories, and shared his own. He understood what they were going through in ways that no adult could. He had been there. He knew the fear, the hunger, the loneliness. One day at the Seoul shelter, he met a girl named Mi-soon. She was 12 years old and had been living in a subway station for 3 weeks. Her parents had died in a fire, and she had no other family. She was small and thin and terrified. She reminded Taemin of himself. He sat down next to her on one of the shelter's couches. He did not try to touch her or get too close. He just sat there and spoke quietly. "I know you are scared. I was scared too. I lived on the streets for 2 years. I know how cold it gets at night. I know how it feels when people look through you like you do not exist." Mi-sun looked at him with large, frightened eyes. "How did you stop being scared?" "I did not," Taemin admitted. "I am still scared sometimes. But I learned that being scared is okay. What matters is what you do when you are scared." "Do you hide or do you ask for help?" "What if no one helps?" My son whispered. "Then you keep asking until someone does. And right now we are here. We want to help. You do not have to trust us right away. You do not have to do anything except stay warm and eat food and be safe. The rest can come later." Mi-sun started crying. They were not loud sobs, just quiet tears running down her face. Taemin handed her a tissue and sat with her while she cried. When she finally calmed down, she asked, "Can I really stay here?" "As long as you need to," Taemin promised. Watching Mi-sun slowly start to trust the shelter workers and accept help, Taemin understood why he had chosen to stay on Earth. This was what Prince Daesung's death had meant. Not just saving one person, but creating a way to save many people. The foundation expanded beyond Korea. Shelters opened in Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, and India. Then they spread to Europe, Africa, and the Americas. The alien technology made it possible to help more people with less cost. Clean water systems were installed in refugee camps. Mobile medical units using celestial diagnostic tools were sent to disaster zones. Solar generators provided power to remote villages. Taemin was the face of the foundation, but he tried hard to stay grounded. Sora helped with that. She became his best friend and eventually something more. She kept him humble, reminding him that he was still just a teenager who was bad at math and forgot to do his homework sometimes. Jinho and the other guards became like family. They protected Taemin from people who wanted to use him for their own purposes. They taught him about the wider galaxy and the Celestial Imperium. They shared stories of their home worlds and asked questions about Earth. One evening, as Taemin sat in his apartment doing homework, Jinho entered with an urgent expression. "The Sovereign wishes to speak with you." Taemin looked up from his math problems. "The Sovereign? Like the actual ruler of the Celestial Imperium?" Jinho nodded. "Prince Daesung's father. He has been watching what you have built. He has a message for you." Taemin's heart began to race. He was about to speak with the father of the prince he had tried to save. The father whose son had died in his arms. What would he say? What could he possibly say? But he had learned something in the past year. Sometimes you just had to face your fears and do the right thing even when you were scared. Okay, Taemin said, closing his math book. I am ready. The Korean government had no choice but to agree. The aliens had shown no hostility, and the whole world was watching. Social media exploded with the story of the homeless boy who had helped a dying alien prince. Within hours, Taemin's face was everywhere. On news broadcasts, on websites, on phone screens across the globe. People called him a hero. They called him an angel. They called him proof that humanity had goodness in it. But Taemin did not feel like any of those things. He just felt tired and confused and very, very small. The Celestial Guard worked quickly. They set up a perimeter around the alley and began preparing for their ceremony. Human officials tried to interfere at first, but Commander Hana was firm. This was their right, their tradition, and they would see it through. A young alien soldier approached Taemin. He was smaller than the others, less intimidating. When he spoke, his Korean was almost perfect, with barely any accent. Hello. My name is Jin Ho. I studied Earth languages and cultures at our academy. Commander Hana asked me to stay with you and explain things. Is that okay? Taemin nodded. He was grateful to have someone who could help him understand what was happening. Jin Ho led him to a spot where he could sit down. Someone brought him a blanket, a real warm new blanket. Someone else brought him food, though Taemin's stomach was too nervous to eat much. Jin Ho sat beside him and began to explain. The Celestial Guard are the elite protectors of the royal family. Each of us is bonded to our duty through honor and ancient tradition. We train our whole lives for this purpose. Jin Ho's voice became quiet. We failed Prince Daesung. We were supposed to protect him, but we were not there when he needed us. You succeeded where we failed. You gave him peace in his final moments. I didn't do anything special, Taemin said. I couldn't leave him alone. That is exactly why it is special, Jin Ho replied. You had nothing. You were cold and hungry and struggling to survive. But you still chose to help someone who was suffering more than you. That is the mark of true honor. As the day went on, Jin Ho told Taemin about the Celestial Imperium. It was a vast alliance of many different species, spanning across many star systems. They valued honor, loyalty, and compassion above all else. They had advanced technology and great power, but they believed that how you treated the weak and vulnerable showed your true character. Prince Daesung had been passionate about understanding other species. He insisted on meeting them personally, not just reading reports. That was why he had come to Earth in a small ship with minimal security. He wanted to experience human culture firsthand. It was a decision that had cost him his life when enemy ships attacked him. Meanwhile, the world was learning about Taemin. Reporters dug into his background. They found records of his parents' death in a car accident 2 years ago. They found how he had slipped through the cracks of the social services system. They found that he had been living on the streets alone and forgotten, while people walked past him every day. The public reaction was not what Taemin expected. People were not angry at him or suspicious of him. They were angry at themselves, at their society. How could they let a child live like this? How could they ignore his suffering? The boy who showed more compassion than most of them now stood as a mirror reflecting their failures. As evening approached, the Celestial Guard began their funeral ceremony. They created a field of energy that transformed the dirty alley into something beautiful. Lights floated in the air like stars. The ground became clean and smooth. The walls seemed to shimmer with colors that Taemin had no names for. Commander Hana asked Taemin to participate in the ceremony. She led him to a platform where the prince's body lay on a table of light. The old blanket rested on top of the body, looking shabby and out of place among all the alien beauty. In our tradition, Hana explained, objects that bring comfort at death are burned to light the spirit's way home. Will you place your blanket on our prince one final time? Taemin's hands shook as he stepped forward. This blanket was the last thing he had from his mother. It was all he had owned in the world. But he had already given it once. He could give it again. He placed his hands on the blanket, smoothing it gently over the prince's chest. I hope you find your way home, he whispered. I hope you find peace. The blanket suddenly ignited with blue flames. But instead of burning away to ash, it seemed to dissolve into pure light. The light rose up like smoke, drifting higher and higher until it disappeared into the sky. Taemin watched it go, and he felt something release in his chest. It felt like goodbye. It felt like letting go. The celestial guard sang something in their language. It was beautiful and sad and full of longing. Even though Taemin could not understand the words, he felt tears running down his face. When the ceremony ended, Commander Hana approached Taemin again. The sun was setting now, painting the sky orange and purple. The 24 hours were almost up. The prince gave you his mark. This means you are considered family to the Celestial Imperium. We can offer you a home among the stars. You would receive education, training, and honor. You would never be cold or hungry again. You would be protected and valued. It was everything Taemin had dreamed about during his cold nights on the street. A home, safety, a future. How could anyone say no to that? But as Taemin looked around at the ceremony, at the cameras recording everything, at the city of Seoul spread out around them, he realized something important. If he left, he would just be another kid who escaped his problems. He would be saving himself, but what about all the other kids like him? What about the children sleeping in subway stations and under bridges right now? I want to stay, Taemin said slowly. If I leave, nothing changes here. There will be more kids like me, alone and forgotten. I want to help them. I want to make sure no one else has to feel as alone as I did. Commander Hana smiled. It was a gentle smile that seemed to transcend the differences between their species. Then we will help you do that. She turned to address her soldiers and the watching cameras. The Celestial Guard hereby establishes the Prince Daesung Memorial Foundation. Its purpose is to help homeless children across this world. Taemin will be its director. We will provide technology and resources. The prince believed in the potential of Earth. We will honor his belief by helping its most vulnerable. The soldiers struck their chests in approval. The cameras caught everything. And Taemin, still just a 14-year-old boy, wondered if he had just made the right choice or a terrible mistake. Jinho placed a hand on his shoulder. You will not be alone in this. Some of us will stay to help you, if you will have us. 5 other soldiers stepped forward, volunteering to remain on Earth. It was unprecedented, but Commander Hana approved. The prince chose him as kin. We will honor that choice. As the Celestial Guard prepared to depart, leaving Jinho and the 5 others behind, Taemin felt something shift inside him. He was no longer just a homeless boy trying to survive. He was something more now. He just had to figure out what that meant. Taemin spent the morning doing what he always did. He collected empty bottles and cans from trash bins. He returned them to a recycling center for a few coins. The man at the center gave him a strange look, asking why he was not wearing a jacket on such a cold day. Taemin just shrugged and took his money. He bought 2 rice balls and a bottle of water. He ate 1 rice ball immediately and saved the other for later. As he ate, he thought about the creature in the alley. He knew he needed to tell someone, but the idea scared him. What would people say? Would they believe him? Would they blame him somehow? By noon, Taemin decided to go back to the alley. Maybe he could find some identification on the body. Maybe there was something that would explain what had happened. He still had the second rice ball, and the thought of going back to his usual spot felt wrong somehow. But when he got close to the alley, he stopped. Something was different, very different. The sky was full of ships. They were not airplanes or helicopters. These were massive, sleek vessels hanging in the air high above Seoul. They were silver blue in color and shaped like nothing Taemin had ever seen. There were at least a dozen of them, maybe more. They were so large that they blocked out parts of the sun. People on the streets were stopping and pointing. Some were taking pictures with their phones. Others were running away in fear. Taemin could hear sirens in the distance. Police cars and military vehicles were racing through the streets. Taemin's heart began to pound. These ships had to be connected to the creature he had found. They had to be. There was no other explanation. He started moving toward the alley, but before he could get there, something happened that made his blood turn to ice. The alley suddenly filled with light, bright and blue-white like a spotlight from above. Taemin stopped at the entrance and stared. Soldiers stood everywhere. But these were not human soldiers. They were tall, with the same silver-blue skin as the creature from last night. They wore armor that looked both ancient and advanced at the same time, with glowing symbols on the chest plates. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with energy. There were so many of them. Taemin tried to count but gave up. They filled the entire alley and seemed to surround the whole block. Later he would learn there were exactly 200. One of the soldiers stepped forward. This one was different from the others. She removed her helmet and Taemin saw her face clearly. She was female, he thought. though he was not completely sure how to tell with aliens. She was tall and had an air of command about her. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. A device on her armor spoke in perfect Korean. "We are searching for Prince Dae-sung of the Celestial Guard. Our tracking systems show his life signals ended in this location." "Human child." She looked directly at Taimin, and he felt like she could see right through him. "Did you see anything unusual here?" "Prince?" The creature Taimin had helped was a prince? His mouth went dry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Finally, he just pointed at the pile of cardboard he had used to cover the body. The soldiers moved immediately. They were fast and efficient. When they pulled away the cardboard, they found the body still wrapped in Taimin's old blanket. The sight of it seemed to affect all the soldiers at once. They made a sound together, something between a gasp and a cry of grief. The female commander knelt beside the body. Her hand hovered over the blanket, not quite touching it. She was very still for a long moment. Then she carefully picked up the blanket, examining it closely. She looked at Taimin with an expression he could not read. The commander touched something on her wrist. A holographic image appeared in the air, floating like magic. It showed the alley from last night, but in strange colors, heat colors, Taimin realized. He watched himself on the screen, finding the prince, wrapping him in the blanket, sitting beside him through the whole night. The commander stood and walked toward Taimin. The other soldiers stepped aside to let her pass. She stopped just a few feet away from him. She still held the blanket in her hands. When she spoke, her voice had changed. It was softer now, but there was something heavy in it. "This blanket, you gave this to our prince. On your coldest night, when you had nothing else, you gave him your only warmth. Why would you do this?" Taimin looked at her, then at all the soldiers watching him. He was tired and cold and overwhelmed. He did not know what answer they wanted. So he just told the truth. "Because no one should die alone and cold. I know how that feels." The commander stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her soldiers and spoke in her own language. It sounded like music and wind chimes. The soldiers responded immediately. As one, all 200 of them dropped to one knee. They placed their right fists over their hearts. It was clearly a sign of respect, and it was directed at Taimin. Taimin did not know what to do. He just stood there, confused and scared. The commander turned back to him. "I am Commander Hana of the Celestial Guard. Prince Dae-sung was the youngest son of our sovereign. He was on a peaceful mission to your world when his ship was attacked by our enemies. He must have been badly wounded in the crash. He tried to reach help, but his injuries were too severe." She paused, and Taimin saw real emotion in her alien face. "Among our people, the manner of death matters greatly. It determines how the spirit is honored. Prince Dae-sung died in comfort and warmth, with someone who cared about his suffering beside him. This is an honored death, not a casualty of war. And this happened because of you." The commander looked down at Taimin's chest, and her eyes widened. "The prince marked you. Do you see?" Taimin looked down. Through his thin shirt, he could see a faint blue glow on his chest, right over his heart. It was exactly where the prince had touched him. "The mark of bond," Commander Hana said quietly. "It is the highest honor our people can give. The prince chose you as family in his final moments. He recognized your spirit as worthy." Before Taimin could process this, the sound of engines filled the air. Military trucks and vehicles arrived, and human soldiers poured out. They had weapons pointed at the aliens. Officers were shouting orders. The tension in the air became thick and dangerous. A Korean military commander stepped forward with a megaphone. "Alien forces, you are ordered to leave Earth's atmosphere immediately. You have violated our airspace. Leave now or we will open fire." Commander Hana did not move. She stood calmly and spoke, her translator broadcasting her words loud enough for everyone to hear. "We are here to honor a debt. This child gave everything he had to comfort a dying prince. We will not leave until we have properly honored our fallen and fulfilled our obligation to the one who showed him kindness." The standoff continued. More military forces arrived. News helicopters circled overhead. Cameras were recording everything. Taimin could see reporters with microphones trying to get closer. Then Commander Hana did something unexpected. She activated her communication device and broadcast a message on every frequency. Every phone, every television, every radio in the world picked it up. "People of Earth," she said, "we request 24 hours to honor our prince and repay our debt to this child. Then we will leave peacefully. But know this, Taimin, son of Earth, is now under the protection of the Celestial Guard. Anyone who harms him harms us all. The message ended. The world held its breath. And Tae-min, the homeless boy from Seoul, stood at the center of it all, wondering how his life had suddenly become so impossible. The wind cut through the alley like a knife. Tae-min pulled his thin jacket tighter, but it did almost nothing against the freezing cold. He was 14 years old, and he had been living on the streets of Seoul for 2 years now. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was colder than any night he could remember. He sat in his usual spot behind the old shopping district. The buildings here had been abandoned for months, which meant fewer people to tell him to move along. He had a small collection of cardboard boxes that he used to block the wind. His most precious possession lay across his lap, a wool blanket his mother had made before she died. It was old and had holes in it, but it was warm. It was all he had left of her. Tae-min's stomach growled. He had managed to earn some money earlier by helping an old woman carry her groceries, but he had spent it on a small meal. Now he wished he had saved some for tomorrow. He always thought about tomorrow, but somehow tomorrow always came too fast. The temperature kept dropping. Tae-min could see his breath in the air like small clouds. He wrapped the blanket around his shoulders and tried to think warm thoughts. He thought about his mother's smile. He thought about the small apartment they used to live in. He thought about hot soup on cold days. These memories hurt, but they also kept him going. Around midnight, he heard something strange. It was a sound like metal scraping against concrete, followed by heavy breathing. Tae-min froze. Sometimes dangerous people came into these alleys. He had learned to be very quiet and very still when that happened. But this sound was different. It was not footsteps. It was more like something dragging itself across the ground. Then he heard a sound that made his heart race, a groan of pain, deep and desperate. Tae-min knew he should stay hidden. He knew he should not get involved in things that were not his business. That was how you survived on the streets. But something in that sound made him think of himself, of all the times he had been hurt and alone with no one to help. He grabbed his phone. The battery was almost dead, but the small flashlight still worked. Slowly, carefully, he moved deeper into the alley toward the sound. What he found made him stop breathing. There was a person lying against the dumpster, but it was not really a person. The skin was wrong. It was silver blue and seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The hands had too many fingers, and they were too long. The face was similar to a human face, but not quite right. The eyes were larger and shaped differently. This was not human. This was something else entirely. The creature was wearing some kind of suit made of metal and strange materials. Parts of it were broken and sparking. Dark purple blood was everywhere, pooling on the ground and staining the creature's clothes. The breathing was shallow and wet, like every breath was a struggle. Tae-min's hand shook. His mind screamed at him to run, to get away, to call someone. But who would he call? The police? They would ask questions he could not answer. They might take him away to some facility for homeless children. And what would they do to this creature? Would they hurt it, study it, make things worse? The creature's eyes opened. They were large and dark, almost black. But there was something in them that Tae-min recognized. Fear, pain, loneliness. The same things he saw in his own eyes when he looked at his reflection in store windows. The creature tried to speak, but the sounds made no sense. The voice was strange, with tones that seemed wrong for a human throat. But Tae-min understood anyway. This being was asking for help. This being was dying. Tae-min looked down at the blanket in his hands. It was the only thing keeping him warm on this freezing night. If he gave it away, he would spend the rest of the night shivering and cold. He might get sick. He might freeze. But this creature was already dying from cold and injuries. The temperature was still dropping. Without something warm, it would not last until morning. Tae-min made his decision before he could think about it too much. He moved closer to the creature, trying not to scare it. The creature watched him with those large, dark eyes. Tae-min could see it trembling. Whether from fear or cold, he did not know. Gently, carefully, Tae-min wrapped his mother's blanket around the creature's shoulders. The being made a small sound, almost like a sigh of relief. Tae-min tucked the edges of the blanket around the creature's body, trying to keep the warmth in. He had 1 bottle of water left. It was supposed to last him until tomorrow, but he used it now to clean the worst of the wounds. The purple blood was thick and strange, but blood was blood. He did what he could, which was not much. Then Tae-min sat down next to the creature. He pressed his side against the being's side, sharing his body heat. The creature was cold, so cold, but slowly it seemed to warm up a little. Taemin started talking. He did not know if the creature could understand him, but his mother used to say that a calm voice could comfort anyone, so he talked about small things. He talked about the stars he could see between the buildings. He talked about the first snow of winter. He talked about his mother and how she used to make him hot chocolate on cold nights. The hours passed slowly. Taemin shivered without his blanket, but he stayed where he was. The creature's breathing was getting slower and weaker. Taemin knew what was happening, but he did not leave. No one should die alone. He knew that feeling too well. As the first light of dawn began to brighten the sky, the creature turned its head to look at Taemin. One long-fingered hand reached out slowly and pressed against Taemin's chest right over his heart. The touch was gentle and warm. For a moment, just a moment, the creature's eyes seemed to show something. Gratitude, maybe. Understanding. Peace. The hand glowed with a soft blue light, and Taemin felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. It did not hurt. It felt like hope. Then the hand fell away. The creature's eyes closed. The breathing stopped. Taemin sat there as the sun came up. He was cold and tired and sad. He looked at this being from somewhere beyond Earth who had died in a dirty alley in Seoul. He looked at his mother's blanket, now covering a dead alien. Finally, Taemin stood up. His legs were stiff from sitting so long in the cold. He found some cardboard and carefully covered the body. He did not know what else to do. He needed to get warm. He needed to eat something. He needed to figure out what to do next. As he walked away from the alley, Taemin did not know that everything was about to change. He did not know that his act of kindness would reach across the stars. He did not know that tomorrow, his life would never be the same again. He only knew that he had done the right thing, even if it cost him everything. That was enough.